but I don't know everything. And I definitely don't know everything or anything about real estate. In fact, when we bought our first house, I had my husband do all the legwork, and I just came and I signed on the dotted line because I didn't feel like I wanted to get too educated on it. When I bought my second house, I really wanted to know what the heck was going on, and I really wanted to be a part of it. So I had to spend a lot of time reading things on the internet and trying to get educated there. Then I found out that a lot of the articles I was reading were blogs that were written by ghostwriters, and they weren't the experts. So I think I got good education, but I really didn't know. The other thing is I didn't know anything about financing. So I had to rely 100% on my husband and his knowledge. And while I think my husband's brilliant, he's not a finance guy either. He wasn't trained in that. He's a contractor. So my dream, and I'm kind of just talking a little bit longer right now because I'm waiting for some more people to pop in. I can see there's some people in the waiting room. My dream was to find a platform where we could educate the community from the experts themselves. I didn't want people to have to ask their friends and family or go on Facebook and start trying to get knowledge that way, because your friends will tell you whatever they think you want to hear. Your family always wants to be super knowledgeable, but sometimes they're just not. And like I said, when you're watching things or you're reading things on the internet, again, they're by ghostwriters. So my dream is coming to fruition today. I have 4 panelists here for you. They are local San Diego business owners. They're all small business owners, which is great in this COVID world. I found this team to talk with you today because they share the same thoughts that I do. And that's, you're gonna make your own decisions. Your home, your family, you're gonna do what's right for you, but you have to know all the pieces and all the options for you to make those decisions. So these guys who are here today, I'm going to introduce them in just a few minutes. These guys are all here to provide you with the knowledge that you need, the answers that you need to make educated decisions about buying, selling, and remodeling your house. A couple of housekeeping items. The folks who are here watching today, nobody can see you, nobody can hear you. However, this is an interactive webinar. So if you've got any questions, you can go scroll down to the bottom to the Q&A and you can write down your questions. Our moderators will get them. They will answer your questions directly. It's not something they're here to answer whatever questions you've got. We have Fred in the background. You're not going to see him. We also have Cassandra in the background. They are helping us behind the scenes. Second thing I wanted to bring up was, oh, we're live. I mentioned that. Did you know that we're on Facebook and we're on YouTube right now too? So hi to the world, anybody who's watching us there. Kind of cool. You can send us a message through Facebook because Cassandra is moderating that. And so if you're not registered and you didn't pre-register, you can still ask your questions. We will still answer them. The last thing, you folks who did register, keep an eye on your mailbox. I've got something really cool showing up in your mailbox this week. I just wanted to say thank you for arriving today. Moving on, the people here, I'm trying to see who's on the screen. So Michael is volunteered to be our moderator. He's done a zillion of these for his company. He's with Kendo Studios. Brad, he's also an architect. Brad Seaman is here. He is our real estate expert. We've got Jack Crocker. He is our construction expert. And we've got Sean Kelly. He's here to talk about financing. So how this is going to work. Each gentleman is going to take 5 to 10 minutes. They're going to give a quick little seminar about what's going on in their industry. And then we are going to break from that. We're going to go into a panel discussion where Michael is going to ask questions to everybody on the panel. They're all going to have an opportunity to answer that question from their position. And then we'll take some Q&As and then we're going to wrap up. So we could wrap up early. It just depends on how many questions we get from the audience. So I'm going to go ahead and launch this off to Brad Seaman. Please introduce yourself and tell us what you do and who you are and what services you offer. And you have to get off mute.
And I have to get off mute. I have to remember that. I'm Brad Seaman. I'm a broker and founder of the Seaman team at Keller Williams. Been in the business about 11 years, and my background is actually in residential property flipping. So I flipped over 100 homes with investors and owner occupants alike. So from about 2009 to 2012, I was flipping houses at a very high rate. And then I transferred all those skills into helping out homeowners figure out where to spend the money. What do they spend on? What do they not spend on in order to get the most out? And then also creating transition plans to get to their next homes. So I was a director of acquisitions for a company called Viewpoint Equities, buying homes in distress. And I really watched the market trends very, very close. So I've got a passion for helping people out, unlocking their equity, and I appreciate you having me on.
Thank you for being. All right, next up is gonna be Sean.
Thank you, Nicole. And again, thanks for taking all the time and effort to put this presentation together, seminar together. I think it's going to be, wonderful for our clients and everybody out there. Sean Kelly, RWM Home Loans. I am a 30-year veteran of the financing battles out there. And if anyone, knows what goes on in our industry, if nothing else happens, it's always changing. And I think that's the biggest thing is, what you know about loans and what you know about the financing market, a year ago, again, it doesn't play today. So, seeking out and getting good expert advice, whether it's, from me or somebody else, is critical to being able to, execute on your plans. And, and that's really, I think, what we try to do. And I think what people out there try to do that are doing this right is we're here as advisors for you. I don't try to purport that, I'm the end all and I'm the guy that's going to, have all the answers. But what I am going to do is, try to work with people to give them the tools and the background information and, concrete, here's what you can, qualify for. And this is what makes sense for you in your, situation, or at least what the options are. And then you go from there. So that's really what it's all about. I think we all take it from a, consultative approach where, we're here to basically help. And I look forward in this seminar to dive in some more with that.
Perfect. So we have gotten a few questions, people asking us whether or not we'll be sending out this recording. If you pre-registered for this event, we will be sending out the recording. Obviously, if you did not, we don't have your information. So if you want us to, feel free to email Nicole at smallbusinessmarketingsolutions.com, and I'll make sure that you get that video sent off to you. Next up, let's talk with Jack Crocker, who is the owner of Classic Home Improvements.
Good morning, everybody. Welcome. Good morning, everybody. Welcome. I just wanted to tell you real quick a little bit about me. Yes, I'm a contractor. People wonder, contractor is such a broad thing. I'll talk about that a little bit in a couple of seconds. But first, a little bit about me. I've been in construction my entire life. I started working with my father, who was a remodeler, longer ago than I care to admit, working on remodels as a kid, and spent my entire life in construction. I started in remodel. I ended up working in the trades, worked in several different trades, found myself in corporate America and worked for very large construction companies, specifically in San Diego and Southern California, doing all types of new construction of, residential, commercial, multifamily, all those sorts of things. 10 years ago, I decided that it was time to start a company for my family. So this is a family-owned company that we have. I've got family members that work here. We're local to San Diego, and that's what we're about. So I mentioned earlier, I say I'm a contractor, but what does that mean? There's so many kinds of contractors. I'll talk about that very briefly. So very quickly, there's a bunch of different kinds. There's a handyman contractor, somebody that maybe you would find on Nextdoor, or a friend that's working on the weekend, something like that. Those are contractors that do small projects. We're a very, very regulated industry in California, so there's all kinds of rules on what those are. So a handyman is somebody that maybe isn't licensed, but knows how to fix things, and they're allowed to do work under $500. If you have a flood in your home, that's another type of contractor. It's very specialized, and they'll typically work with your insurance company or you and your insurance company to help you with the flood. There's another way to build would be an owner builder, where basically you, the homeowner, you're the contractor. There is no general contractor. How you do that is you figure out what you want to do. You look around and try to find specialty contractors. Those are people that are licensed to do a specific thing. So a contractor has to meet with the state and prove that they know what they're doing. They have experience. They have to pass a test. So those would be like a tile setter would do tile, a framer would do framing, etc. If you're going to hire one of those, you have to make very sure that you only have them do what they have a license for. So in other words, you wouldn't want to have a guy with a tile license install your tub and then put the tile around the tub. Sometimes people will want to hire an architect and have an architect do a full set of plans that have all the details on them. They would want to hire a general contractor. And what he would do was take the plans that you've already created, and you would send it, and he would basically say, pick all your stuff and I'll build it for you. I'm the kind of contractor that's called a design build contractor. What a design build contractor does is you meet with us very early on in the process. You try to figure out what it is you want to do and just kind of tell us all your hopes and dreams. And we take you from the beginning to the end. So you tell us what you want to do. We draw some drawings for you. We help create your vision. We get you the permits, and then we build it for you. And before we build it, we help you select everything. So so when I say I'm a contractor, I'm a design build contractor. So that's what I am.
Nicole, I think you're on mute.
Sorry about that, folks. So thank you for that, Jack, for the explanation of the different types of contractors. Before I move on to Michael, I'd like to kind of circle around again to our other two panelists before going to Michael. Brad, can you share with us a little bit more about the real estate industry, kind of like Jack had with the different types of contractors?
Absolutely. So, our market's really interesting right now. And I want to share some things about, on the topic of this seminar, about how to sell a property and move into another, market trends, and also what the lifestyle trends are out there right now. There's some really interesting pieces going on in our market. And, so the first thing is lifestyle trends. If you talked to me 12 months ago about what's going on with what people are doing, moving, right? Are they downsizing? Are they upsizing? What style of home and areas are they looking in? It really felt like people were moving into more communal atmospheres, right? They were buying homes where maybe it has a smaller lot, but they had more community amenities, or they were closer where they could turn their key and walk away. And that seems to continue to be a trend, but COVID's really changed things for us, right? So COVID has now, I say COVID made me do it, right? Because I'm guilty as charged. I sold my own house in the middle of COVID and wanted a different change in life. But COVID influence is actually making people reassess as a whole what they're doing with their home, right? What is important to them in their home? Do they need a home office? Is outdoor space more important? The pools are going in like crazy in all of San Diego. So people are looking for new ways to either utilize their existing home, or they're deciding that it's really important for them to sell their house and move into the next bigger home, or downsize, or even out of state. So lots of changes with COVID. And I think that trend will continue with our industry, and so many more people now working from home, and that might become a permanent solution for a lot of people. So keep your eye on those trends and see if they change, but we're seeing the market is just going on fire. So right now, inventory is at an all-time low. Interest rates are incredibly low, as I know Sean will talk about here in a little bit. But our median home price in San Diego is up 13 to 16% year over year. 13 to 16% during a pandemic, which is unbelievable. That means single family homes in San Diego have gone up $100,000 in just the last year on average. Our days on market are super low. So if you have a home that's under $1 million or $1.2 million, it's likely going to sell in the first or second weekend that it's on the market. So things are moving fast, and there's not really any current sign of it slowing down. There's no indicators that we're going to have major change yet, it's still going down this path. So what does it mean, right? I talk about what the market conditions are doing. What does it really mean to you? Well, when we're talking about renovating, relocating, upsizing, downsizing, we really have to assess what your goals are, right? So one of the things that we do is we sit down with our customers and find out how do we determine if the home that you're currently in is one that it makes sense to do some renovations and stay put. Well, you got to talk about the vision that you have for your life, right? Where do you want to be? What kind of home do you want to be in? And what can you change and not change, right? There's pretty much anything that you can change with a little bit of money or renovating or putting in a pool in the backyard, but things that you can't change in your current home. So can you change your neighbors? Do you like your neighbors or do you not, right? Are you looking for a different atmosphere that you want to live in? What about schools? Schools were very important 12, 24 months ago. Schools seem to be a diminishing thing that we're hearing from people as to what they need in their next home and being in that public school district that's highly rated. So assessing what is important to you and deciding if moving is an option, my opinion is you gotta assemble your team, put the people around you so you can understand financing, renovation, that right transition plan for you to move from one house to the next house. And if staying is an option, that's the same exact thing. You got to put that team around you, assess what the value of your home is, what you're going to do in improvements, and how you're going to make that your forever home. So I just wanted to touch quickly on, with our market conditions today, what are people doing to be able to compete for homes in today's market? So in today's market, there's multiple offers. They're often selling over the list price, and almost in all cases, they're non-contingent. So what does that mean? Non-contingent means you don't have to sell a home to buy the next one. So in order to put yourself in a position to buy the next property, you have to go through some tests. You have to see, number one, you have to ask yourself, can I carry 2 mortgages? So if you're not going to sell your current property, can you apply and afford and be pre-approved for that next property and hold on to 2 at the same time? Or do you really need to sell in order to buy the next one? And how do you do that without being homeless? So I'd love to dig into that a little bit more, but it's really important that if you're considering maybe trading up or trading down in a home, you really have to look at all the factors right now in today's market to make sure that you're successful if you're going to make that move. So that's all for now. I appreciate it, and kick it back to you, Nicole.
You would think in this COVID world that I would get my mute button down. So let's go next to Sean. I'm going to circle back around to you to talk a little bit more about the financing. Can you tell us a little bit about what interest rates are like right now? What's kind of going on in the finance world?
Thanks, Nicole. Well, first of all, I think it's no surprise to anybody, but interest rates are at stupid low, historically low rates right now. I mean, we're basically doing a lot of loans in the 2s when that's dependent upon obviously credit score and loan to value and what type of transaction you're doing. But as low as 2.25% on like a VA, nothing down, to 2.75 on jumbo multi-million-dollar loans. And on the 15-year money, it's cracking the 2. So that's a huge mover, and it contributes to what Brad's been talking about the 13 to 16% price appreciation over the last year. Because so often in our industry, people really look at overall payment. What's my payment going to be, and not necessarily just the interest rate. And so if you see a point decrease, like if you go from 3.5 down to 2.5%, or from 4 down to 2.75 on an interest rate, what that does is it keeps, you can raise the price by $100 or $200 or $300,000, and you end up with the same exact payment. And so that's obviously what's driving part of this appreciation. And then the other part of the appreciation, in at least our market here, San Diego and most of Southern California, is really just supply. I mean, there's just, and Brad, you can talk to this, and there's just not enough houses to go around to meet demand. But I think the bigger trend in our industry over the last umpteen years is certainly after there's a dividing point that happened in 2008 with the big mortgage meltdown. And after 2008 and going up, starting in about 2012, when the market, finally got back its feet underneath it, the underwriting guidelines and standards that they put into place post mortgage meltdown 2008 completely changed, the tenor of our industry. And now basically, if you're getting loans, if you're getting a loan at 2.5%, you're what they call fully documented, and you have good credit, and you have reserves, and you meet all the criteria in the test, to be able to, to qualify for these loans. If you're self-employed, it means a further in-depth review of your financials on your business side up to the current year, not just, prior tax returns. So what does that mean? It really means that, in order to play in this game at whatever level, whether you're going to do a refinance or it's your first time, condo house, it's really important to get pre-qualified and work with, again, a professional to make sure there's no issues that could potentially, cause a problem going down the line. The other issue that I just want to kind of speak to this of what's really happening is a lot of people ask me is will values go down, or will we see another major drop in values, we can jump in like '08 again? And I don't know where values go. I don't know if they go up or they go down, but what I do know, and again, I've been doing this for 30 years in this market, is the quality of the borrower over the last 5 to 7 years has never been better. And so that tells me that even if there is an economic downturn, or if there's a problem, on a bigger macro level, is values in real estate, again, in good markets, should maintain much more robustly than what we saw in like the '08 turn down. Truly, the credit worthiness of the borrower out there is really phenomenal. So again, more steps to jump through, greater detail. But if you can play in that game, if you are set up in that space, you get great rates, you get great programs, and you're able to take advantage of the market. So that's just kind of a big overview.
Thank you so much for that. So our next person I'm going to have speak out to the audience here is Michael Kanzirsky. He's the owner of Kendo Studios. And you know what, Michael, you can talk about who you are and what you do and why people call you. Go ahead.
Thank you, Nicole. Listen, my name is Michael Kinderski. I was asked to moderate this panel because, as a professional, having my firm for a while, I grew up in construction, stick framing, very similar to Jack, just been doing it my entire life. My path was I got degrees in architecture and construction engineering, certificates in construction administration, sustainable design, prefab building systems. And I've designed and successfully completed hundreds of new homes and renovation projects. So I've been in this my entire life. And when I say I've done successful projects, it is because I have this passion to do this all my life. And you have this passion to build out your next project. But it's this passion combined with the perspective of these professionals. And these are the professionals I call to gain their perspective. For instance, I've known Jack for years. We've worked together on both new homes and renovation projects. I am in contact with his teams, and my architects are in contact with his teams constantly for updates, detail question, timelines, utility layouts, construction details, everything. I get calls weekly about people looking into new property. And like I said, before I can even put pen to paper, it's contacting these real estate professionals, contacting these finance professionals before we move forward. So like I said, we all want the project to be successful, and I need all of these individuals. So if I'm contacting these individuals to gain their insights and perspective, I encourage you to reach out to these professionals, and please ask any questions, type them into Nicole. I'm going to go over some very general questions to the panel, but please type in your general questions or even specific questions, and we'll try to get to them at the end of the year. We'll get through as many as we can. So, and very briefly, I'm just going to touch on sort of one topic that that we can sort of talk about, and Brad talked about it, inventory, new lot inventory. If you want to build a new home on a vacant lot, like I said, there's very low inventory with respect to the demand right now. And there's quite a few things that come into play when building on a new lot. We need the insight and perspective of all these professionals online, plus a few more we have to deal with. So there's the simple things like property. You have this lot, there are easements, setbacks, slopes. What was the previous use? Is there hazardous material and zoning? And we have to overlay other professionals like geotechnical engineers, soils reports, boring, perk test, cut and fill. What's underneath that surface that may hinder or affect the construction, both design and cost. Then there's all things like utilities. Do we have access to public water, or do we need a well? Was there an abandoned well? What's the condition of that water well? The electric line, the locations, how far do we have to run that electric to the house? Is there a septic tank or sewer? We have to design for that, and the leach fields if it's a septic. And then a topic that's on everybody's mind with the Santa Ana winds is fire. We need proper access to your site, both for the fire truck. Is the driveway wide enough? What is the material? What is the slope? The closest hydrant, what is that hydrant pressure? Are we going to need a fire truck turnaround? All these things overlay. There's quite a few involved with just fire alone. And then there's sort of these neighborhood and jurisdictional regulations. It might be coastal commission, height restrictions, another set of submissions. It could be homeowners association. They could have everything from color and style, but we've also seen some of them impose additional setback regulations. So all these come into play. And then the biggest factor is time. What is your schedule to move into this new home? When would you like it to move in? And quite honestly, it is a more lengthy process. This designing and permitting and construction of a new home on a vacant site does take quite a bit more time. Not to scare you off of it, it's still a path, but it's a path in the area due to inventory. We're doing less and less. More people are either renovating or buying a house to renovate. And I guess if you're looking for a new house, you still have the option of buying a house that a developer's building. But there's the homeowners I talk to, they have the issue with, I don't know my neighbors, or I don't want the same house everybody else is doing, and what is the quality of the house, or quite frankly, I just don't like the neighborhood. And is it unique to me? There's another option of finding a dilapidated house and tearing the majority of it down. So we can sort of almost start from scratch by maintaining a few walls. We're able to do a major renovation and move that into the permit process of renovation as opposed to new home. I wanted to touch on that briefly before we get into the main segment. And like I said, this main segment, I'm going to pose some questions to our panelists. They're going to start it off. All the other panelists are welcome to join in, expand on the topic, or they might have a completely different point of view or perspective. And there might be some disagreement. So I'm going to open up the first question. Let's start with Jack Crocker. Jack, where would you suggest someone start in a scenario where they're planning on finding an older house in a neighborhood they really like with the intention of a complete renovation of the project?
Thanks, Mike. I mean, that's a great question. We get calls like this all the time here at Classic. You know, people are saying, you know, I want a new house. I've found one that I like, but it pretty much needs a new everything. Where do I start? And that's actually an interesting question, because ultimately you're going to get those answers from a contractor, but really the place to start is going to be with a real estate agent, because again, speaking to inventory, and for a contractor to give you some educated response on what it's going to take and what's even available, we need to get very specific to the project and the property and all those things you referred to be able to give good advice. So I would probably kick that over to Brad and let him answer that a little bit further on, you know, as if the very first step is looking for the place, what kinds of things you want to look for, because once you know what you're going to buy, then that's when you can talk to a contractor.
Yeah, thanks, Jack. The way I look at this is I want a team of people together to decide what the financing looks like, and then what we can really identify. If you know the neighborhood you want to live in, and you have an idea as to what your budget is, whether that's financed or paying cash, then we can create a plan, right? And assess what we need to go through in order to get to that end product. Really budgeting and getting down to the details of a specific property, as Jack and I have talked about before, it takes time, right? It doesn't happen overnight. You don't call somebody when you're in escrow and hope that you can get a full budget as to what your massive renovation is going to be, or what's going to work within your budget. You kind of have to know what your budget is up front and then work backwards. So we sit down and kind of walk through that and get an understanding as to what the needs are, and then we go out and look. So I think you got to really start with budget, and not to kick it straight over to Sean, but you really have to assess what you can afford.
That's great. Well, thanks, Brad. I grabbed that football you tossed me, and I'm running with it here. Caught it. Yeah, and I think that's what's interesting is the entry point into this process comes from a lot of different places. Like somebody may call me, they may call Brad, they may call Jack, or they call Michael. But really what this all is about, I think, big picture here is, where are you? What stage of life are you in? And then what is financially feasible? So anytime you take on a project like this, whether it's just doing a bathroom remodel, or doing a full-on sell your house, fix up your house, sell your house, buy a new house, or build a brand new property, it takes time, it takes a lot of effort, and it takes planning. And I think that's what we're here to do, is to give you those tools and help you with that planning, so that then you can execute. And again, sometimes as you go through the process, you may start out saying, hey, I really want to build that custom dream house on that great lot in Carlsbad, or the Lagoon View, or whatever. But once you go through the process and really dig deep into it, with the help of professionals, it may be the best choice is, to do the major renovation and add the master bedroom and kick a great, pool in your existing backyard. And I mean, that's really what the whole process is. It's about, looking at the alternatives and then making a realistic evaluation of financially what's probably the best move. And I know we talked about this too a lot of times. Sometimes you get to the point in your life where it's not all just about bottom line financials, right? A lot of times you have the capacity to do it. And in the end of the day, it's what fulfills you. So it's what makes your life so much more better. I mean, Brad, I know you and I have been working on some situations where we're getting blended houses now. We're going back to a situation where you have multi-generation families, where you've got the kids, the parents, and the grandparents all living together under one roof. And, I mean, that's a wonderful thing. But, and again, it may not financially work for some people. For other people, it works financially, to their benefit.
That's beautiful. Thank you. And I think, audience, if you can pay attention, you're going to see a couple themes coming through. Number one, we're going to say, boy, your situation really is unique, and we need a little bit more detail. We can cover a basic overview, but each situation is unique, and it deserves that special attention and information. Secondly, is you're going to see how this team is going to collaborate, and we might say you're going to need Sean's assistance first, or Brad, or let's do preliminary look at the neighborhood, or what are you trying to accomplish, and talk to local builder costs or rough design ideas you're looking for. We're all going to collaborate together, and at any point we might say we need more input from both you or one of these other professionals. With that, let's move over to another topic. Sean, let's say you are a homeowner who has a house, but you've outgrown it. Should that person sell the house or have it on the market first before going out shopping for a new property?
Well, This is kind of also a Brad question too, but as I think Brad touched on a little bit earlier, is in today's market in San Diego and most parts of Southern California, you have to come in non-contingent if you're going to be competitive in your offers out on the street, which again means that if you currently have a property and you need to grab the equity out of that property in order to buy the next property or the leg up property, you've got to pre-plan that. You've literally got to figure out a way to get access to that equity, whether it's through using a commercial bank equity line or using some type of bridge loan financing. But again, you've got to be ready to go and or selling the house. And I know Brad's done this, and Brad and his team of people are fabulous at this, which is, threading that needle of actually getting your house ready to sell, selling it, and then getting you in the position and in contract on the next house. It's really like a Houdini act right now to pull that off, but these guys get it done, day in, day out. So, it is, as I go back to, and I don't want to sugarcoat it, is taking on, changing your living situation, whether it's a remodel or it's a purchase right now. It's a lot of work. You got to get on it. You got to have the right team of people to help you and make those dreams come true.
And Sean, I'll pick up on that. So my claim to fame is that I haven't made anyone homeless yet, right? It is threading a needle. It's pretty tough to make sure that we don't make people homeless, but there are some creative ways. So first and foremost, if you can buy the second house, whether it's with financing or cash or whatever you want, if you have a plan of how you can buy the up leg before you sell your existing property, it takes a world of pressure off of you, right? But we find most often we run into the situation where someone needs to tap into that equity of their current home in order to put down on the next property. So in doing that, I think it's key that people make a plan and they sit down and they understand the steps that will take place. I can give you some anecdotal situations. We have several of them right now where we've listed someone's home but not put it on the market yet. Right? We have a good friend and past client that wants to trade up into that bigger home. Well, we told them, we said, you sell your house first in order to buy the next one. You just won't compete on the purchase of the next home. And I said, you're probably going to lose out on your dream home, the one that's done, that's already been remodeled, that's completely finished. You're probably going to have to lose it before you realize the pressure of needing to put your home on the market. Now, selling your home isn't the problem. We're going to sell it really quick. It's probably going to sell in that first weekend. But the reality is, in order for you to buy the next one, you have to be in a position so that you're just as good as a financed offer that doesn't need to sell or have the money in the bank. And it happened just recently. They found their dream home and they realized they were in trouble, and the seller wouldn't even respond to their offer. So before we even put anyone in our cars and get them out there to the properties, by the way, we don't put people in our cars these days anymore because of COVID, but before we even get them out there, we make sure that plan's in place. And if they have to go write a couple offers and lose out, that's what they need to do. And they'll realize what's next. And so the plan changes, and typically what we've recommended will end up being the new plan. So get the plan in place, make sure you're ready to go. And know one thing, and I meant to mention this before, inventory is really tight, right? So with inventory tight, the likelihood of you needing to improve or remodel the home you're going to buy is much higher than it normally is. Because there's not that many homes available on the market, you might have to sacrifice just a bit to get something and then go in and maybe call Jack and find out exactly what needs to be done to improve that property. That dream home that shows up, everybody's going to want the dream home. And it's going to be highly competitive. So sometimes you have to make sacrifices, but have a plan in place to be able to remodel it after the fact.
Hey, Brad, just a quick question just for me. It's, what's going out there right now as far as bids and overbids on, those properties that are, your dream home that are all fixed up?
So when I sit down with a buyer and we want something that's completed product, if they want something that's done, that's completely remodeled, I'm going to let them know that I'm probably not going to be able to justify the price that they're going to pay or that someone will pay for the property on paper. So when we bring comparable properties to them, we say, okay, here you go. Here's the last 6 properties that have sold in the last 30 days, 60 days, 90 days, and that are comparable to this one. The likelihood is this one's going to sell for more. and you're going to have to stretch yourself in order to buy this property. We're seeing anything from $50, $100, in some cases $150,000 over the list price, depending on price point. People are not getting an appraisal. They're just saying we'll buy it no matter what. There's cash buyers all over the place, which we never expected. If you asked me before COVID started if this would be the outcome, I wouldn't have said yes. I did not expect that it was going to be this tight and this aggressive in terms of prices increasing.
Do you think that do you think that's going to continue here for the next year or two? What's the crystal ball say?
Oh, the crystal ball. The elusive crystal ball. Don't we all want one? It's hard to tell. There's no real factors right now, indicators that are telling us it's going to change in the near future. Do I think that there's disruptors that could come up? Yeah, I think there are. And we just have to keep our eyes on those indicators. But as of right now, I mean, I don't see anything changing drastically by the springtime. I think we're going to continue to see appreciation, but we'll keep our pulse on the market to see what happens.
A question for you guys. With I know that over in my area, there's a lot of new homes being built in like Valley Center, Temecula. Who are those buyers these days? Are they coming in from out of state? Are they the millennials? Who's buying all these houses? Do you guys know?
Yes, all of them. So interesting stat for us. We took 15 listings in the month of October. 9 of them were sellers that were moving out of state. So lots of people buying in the surrounding, and Michael and I were talking about this before the call started. They're buying in Idaho, and they're buying in Phoenix and Texas and different states that are surrounding. Some are going to the East Coast, but the majority are here on the West Coast somewhere. Cost of living, paying cash for their properties that they're moving to. But the interesting part was, of those 9 that were moving out of state, 7 of them were replaced by buyers that were coming back in from those same states. So it was really, it was a fact that stood out to me. And many of them were trying to get closer to family. So they may be elderly looking to live closer to their kids. Some were coming in for work. Some always wanted to have a second home in San Diego, and now's the time. They want to get out of their current environment and buy that second home. So it's a mixed bag, but we're seeing a lot of outflow and a lot of people coming in at the same time.
Yeah, quite a few people. I get calls that since the current climate, their work condition, they might have grown up in the area, but for work, they had to be on site in anywhere from Washington, D.C. to San Francisco. Now we're able to do remote work. They're coming back home, or they're coming to a place where they would like to be. We have to admit, this is not a bad place to winter. So I see an awful lot of that. So that to springboard into the next question about with inventory and these biddings. Say someone wants to buy a house they want to buy a house within the next 6 months, Brad. When should they start looking, and what are their first steps? Is 6 months too soon in this climate?
You know, when somebody says they want to buy something in 6 months, they normally mean 3, even though they don't realize it yet. So if it's on their radar, they're typically thinking sooner than later, unless they're like the ultimate planner. So what we'd like to do is the moment someone raises their hand is sit them down and talk about goals and why they're making that choice and where they're going to go with it. And more often than not, they buy and get into the market sooner than the 6 months. It's all set up on goals. So what we do is ask questions and make sure we understand their real needs. We physically sit down with them or through a Zoom call and just categorize what their needs are, and then get out there and look for it and really educate them on the process in the market. The market right now, it's hard on buyers. It's tough, and they're getting beat out on homes that they want. They're losing hope in some cases, but we've had a tremendous success with our team getting people's offers accepted with creative ways, and using our reputation as well with other agents out there to make sure they know who we are and how to get it done. So start now, start as soon as you can. And, you know, we won't, I think I mentioned it before, we won't put people in our cars or get out there showing properties until they have a plan and and have a mortgage pre-approval as well. So that's important to get started there.
Hey, how are you showing houses now since you can't with COVID? Are you guys like, I don't know.
They thought this craze of the virtual showing was going to take off. We've sold homes. I've sold a $3 million condo in Bankers Hill through to a buyer in Seoul, Korea through a FaceTime. Pretty crazy. I mean, nerve-wracking more for me than anyone else. But we've done it. But the reality is there's more online shopping, and then the final look and really getting through the property, people still want to see it in person. So we've stopped putting them in our cars, but we're meeting them at the properties and going through some protocols to make sure that they're safe.
You know, one more question that I have for you, but before you guys move on, I have more questions than anybody. I've heard that you have to have a pre-approval letter or something before you go into a house. Why? And how do you get that?
Well, Sean is the first answer. And yeah, I mean, the sellers are being more demanding right now. So if you want to go out and look at homes, sellers are asking for that pre-approval letter before they'll even schedule an appointment to limit the number of looky-loos coming through properties. Right? So the pre-approval is important, number one, for planning, but also, you have to show either proof of funds or a pre-approval. So Sean would get them started and make sure that that's in place before they even go out there and start looking.
Does that mean they have to have their deposit ready at the time before they come up to you?
Deposit or down payment?
Or down payment, sorry.
Yeah, I mean, they need to be able to source how they're going to pay for it. Yep. So whether that's cash or financing, as long as they can show they can afford a property, it needs to be upfront.
And deposits now need to be like what kind of percentage of the purchase price?
Anywhere between 3.5%. If you're VA, you can do zero down with zero closing costs as well. Everyone talks about that, and Sean can probably talk to you more about that. The 20% down piece. Everyone thinks that they need to get to 20% down. It's not necessary. There's other options that are out there.
I think Nicole, just jumping in on that, is the pre-approval to get that cert and letter for somebody so they can actually go out and start looking at houses in person. It usually takes 20, 30 minutes over the phone. Obviously if someone's more complicated, it'll take longer than that. But we try to help our clients go through that process, get the information that we need, and then bust out a approval letter so that they can go out and do it. Again, again, each case is different, but I'd say the majority of cases, we can take care of it in about a 20, 30-minute phone call. So it shouldn't be a hindrance or a major obstacle to get out there and start doing the next steps in the process.
Great, thank you, gang. Let's move on to one of our next questions. Jack, I'm sure you get this all the time. Say I'm in the process of buying a house, and there is a list from the inspector of things that need being done. And they need to know how much will it all cost so they can negotiate the terms. Who do you recommend they contact?
Well, it really depends. The whole theme of this seminar is actually kind of answers that question, is that it takes a team, right? So, you've got to have your financing in place, you go look at it. And of course, when you see a property, that sort of the theme today is there isn't really the turnkey, I just move in house. Everything is going to need something. A lot of things are going to need everything. And so if you start that process with your real estate agent and you're having real honest conversations with them, one of the things I would tell you is be very aware of your real estate agent's understanding of what it takes. Brad's flipped a lot of houses. He's got an idea. I can't even tell you how many times I've gone in and said, well, my realtor said it would only cost $10,000. And I'm like, well, it's going to be a little bit more than that, So I think getting good advice is essential, but typically you would go to the realtor and they could steer you in the right direction. Most of them are going to be small repairs you need to buy the home. That would be done with a smaller contractor that your realtor could send you to. If you're looking at buying a house that really needs a lot of stuff, then that's when you would be looking at, I talked a lot earlier about the different types of contractors. That's where your realtor could start giving you advice on which type of contract you need to begin to ask questions of.
Yeah, just real quickly, if you're in an escrow, a design build contractor is probably not the one that you're going to call to fix the little items on your list. Well-equipped realtors with connections and trades that they can refer to is the best way to go. So we would refer out those smaller projects, handyman items under $500, termite repairs, things like that. We can help out, but the reality is, you know, if you're looking to do a full remodel, that's when you call a larger general contractor that can help you with those needs.
What's the big difference between like a construction company that's going to do the design build and a contractor that's going to do miscellaneous things around the house?
For me, if you've got a small contractor, they're going to be, like I said, you know, when I talked about the different types, they're going to be like your small handyman types. It might be a series of people, each doing their own task. If you get a design build contractor, that's really a larger process. That's going to be something that takes several meetings and design and all kinds of things before we can get into construction. So there's a lot more involved if you're going to be dealing with a design build contractor, but you're also going to get a lot more of a professional result. And you're going to have a team of people helping you with those decisions, as opposed to having to sort of figure it all out yourself or just kind of band-aid it until later.
Yeah, they might just need an individual trade, like they have a leaky sink or the railing up to their house needs repair to come up to code before the sale. So I guess it's contacting each and every one of us to find out your specific situation. And I would think Brad would be the first person to start with to make that recommendation who to call. Let's just jump into our next question. We're all business owners, and I get quite a few calls from other business owners. Sean, if I own a business and want to buy a new property, what kind of documents are you going to need from us to get me pre-approved?
Thanks, Michael. We consider this what they call self-employed borrowers. And so the definition for a self-employed borrower is anyone that owns more than 25% of their entity or corporation where they get money from. And now that would be if somebody, for example, is a W-2 employee and works for Qualcomm or something like that, and then they have a side business. That's kind of a different setup. But if you've got a situation where somebody gets the majority of their income from a business where they own 25% or more, then we literally have to get the tax returns on that entity. And then we also have to get a year-to-date profit and loss to make sure that the year-to-date numbers are actually in line with prior years. And that's actually a COVID overlay. So that's something that up until about a year ago or so, we really weren't going as in depth on the year-to-date numbers. But now they literally are looking at 2 years tax returns. They're looking at a current year P&L and balance sheet. And they're also asking for 3 months of bank statement, business bank statements showing that the income, the deposits, the gross income that's coming into the business is in line. It doesn't have to be exact, but it is in line with that P&L. So it's a fairly in-depth process to make sure that you would qualify if you're self-employed. And so you definitely want to, talk to a financial expert or myself to be able to get set up for that.
So we have a couple of questions in the chat that I'm going to go over to. How long do pre-approvals last? With the way the market is right now to find the property, we've got a person in the audience who says, I'd like in the neighborhood, they come up once a month. How long do pre-approvals last? With the way the market is now to find the property I'd like and in the neighborhood I like, they come up maybe one a month or so. So when is the time to get one and how long does it last until the house is purchased or it has a deadline?
Yeah, thanks, Nicole. I mean, I can answer that. Our pre-approvals, we set them up for 120 days. And the reason for that is because that's driven off of credit, a credit report that we run. So we run a credit report, we collect your income documentation, and we basically give that approval for up to 120 days. Now, if you're out and you find a property 90 days into it, and we've got a 30-day escrow, we actually still need to update your bank statements, update your pay stubs to make sure they're in line with, again, the initial documentation. But you don't have to keep doing that every 30 days. Obviously we keep in touch with people, but basically you'd start the process, you'd get the pre-approval, good for 120 days.
And I'll add on to that real quick. More and more, we want to see that happen earlier in the process. So if the audience member is looking to, doesn't know when they're going to buy, I'd rather them see them do a pre-approval now. And even if it's a year from now, that we're ready. Because when I'm ready to write an offer, I need it quickly and action has to take place right away. So the longer you wait and you're trying to scramble to get all the pieces together, the tougher it is to get them together and approved by the selling side if you're going to try and buy that property. So do it now and then update it as needed with the mortgage professional.
Yeah, just one thing on that, I'd say, one of the best referrals I ever get is basically a first-time buyer that's basically saying, hey, I'm not going to buy today. I want to buy a year from now or 18 months or, down the line out there in the future. I love sitting down and talking to those folks and literally walking them through the whole process, because this is all Greek for a first-time home buyer. People have done it a couple, 2-3 times. They know the drill. But if you're a first-time buyer, you don't know. And there could be some wrench in your setup, whether it's your income or whether it's where the cash is down payments coming from or whether it's your credit. And if I've got a whole year to plan you out and give you a specific checklist of what you need to get done in that year or 18 months, then boom, then now you've got a specific goal that you can work towards. And, that gives you that incentive every month to do the things you need to do to get there.
That's perfect. Thank you, gang. Let's move on to the next topic. Brad, say I have a house and I want to fix it up to sell it. What should I focus on to get to that best return on investment? What do you see that people should focus on?
Well, so it's a tough general question to answer. So, there's a couple of general things that you can look at. Number one is curb appeal, bathrooms, and kitchen, making sure that they're done and deliverable. My rule of thumb is make sure that a home buyer doesn't feel that they need to spend money the moment they move in. So what that means is I use a rule of 3, right? For every dollar we spend, the buyer thinks it's going to cost $3. If I can put carpet, if you have carpet that's stained and I can put carpet in a house that is going to cost us $3,000, well, the buyer is probably going to want to put in hardwood floors. And that's not going to cost $3,000, it's going to cost more. So the key is, even if it's not the selection that most buyers would make it finished. Complete it and tidy it up. So as a general rule of thumb, focus on bathrooms and kitchens. They are 2 areas that I think you get the most bang for your buck, whether it's full renovation of them or looking at, countertops, painting cabinets. There's things that you can do to try and make them show ready that you can get a return on investment for. So we walk through properties and pretty quickly we can put numbers on them for a real simple cleanup and preparation for market. And then make sure your home shows in terms of furniture, make sure it's staged, or use the existing furniture with a stager's advice so that people feel like they can see themselves in the house.
That's great advice. You see it all the time. Houses, even on the market, that the furniture is either oversized, making the room look smaller, or it is in drastic need of an overhaul of a stained carpet or even just paint on the walls. So that's great advice. Here's a question for Jack, and I field this all the time. Also, I get a lot of people doing this. I'm considering moving my parents into my house, Jack. What kind of things do I need to do to make it safe for them, make it livable for these aging parents?
So I agree. This is a question that we're getting all the time. Not only for moving your parents in, sometimes people are saying, I'm buying my dream home. I'm never going to move. I want to make sure that this is going to work for me as well when I need it. And so there's obviously a couple of key components. People always say, I need a house that's ADA compliant. Well, ADA is actually a commercial designation. It doesn't really apply to a residential home. but we can use some of those same guidelines when it comes to putting your house together. So there's some very simple things you can do. Some of them are obvious, like if they have a wheelchair, you need to have a ramp, you need to avoid steps, those sorts of things. Some of them are less obvious, like putting lever handles doorknobs on instead of round doorknobs. But the biggest question that I get is people that maybe have someone that's aging, whether, or even temporary. Somebody could have tripped and broken their ankle and there's temporarily in a wheelchair. People automatically assume that the bathroom needs to be redone. There can be no, we're taking out the tub, there can't be any step, we got to roll right into the shower. That's not always the case. So when you're aging and doing an age in place thing, what you want to do is you want to make sure that you've got wide open doorways, nice wide hallways to get through. Like I said, lever handles and things that are easy to operate. But you want to be able to, in specific case of a bathroom, because that's where it comes up the most, is you want it so that with assistance, they could get in and out of the tub. Because people think if they're in a wheelchair, they got to be able to roll the wheelchair into the shower. Well, you don't want to roll your wheelchair into the shower because it'll get wet, right? So what you really need is you need a place to stage where you can put the wheelchair, and either with assistance or on your own, depending on what your specific needs are, that you can get in and out of the wash area to have a bath or have a shower, whatever it might be. So those are some of the quick and easy things. I mean, you know, people always start with stairs, they go right to bathrooms, but then think about the kitchen. You know, like, can they reach the faucet? Is the handle the kind of thing that you can get at? There's real thick shag carpet is hard. Maybe you want to go with a solid surface floor. Transitions between floor types kind of create speed bumps. They can be tripping hazards. So there's sometimes it's as simple as rearranging furniture or doing some built-ins. So it's a complicated topic, but there's a lot of things we can do. And the one thing that I'll add is that aging in place is such a big part of the market right now. You know, people think that if they want to do something that's aging in place, it's got to look like the emergency room at the hospital. And there's really beautiful things that we can do that are even ADA compliant and that can be used. Like, you know, an example would be, you know, grab bars don't have to be a piece of metal. You know, they can match your fixtures. The other thing that I suggest is make your towel bars out of grab bar material, because if someone loses their balance and they go to reach for the towel bar, they could really hurt themselves. If it's properly secured, then now it's an asset instead of a liability in a situation like that. So, you know, anti-slip surfaces would be another one. There's lots of things we can do for aging in place.
Isn't the zero edge shower, is that like a really popular thing to do now? Is that for ADA, or for not ADA, but for the aging in place?
It's something that everybody asks about. You know, depending on your site conditions, it can be a fairly simple thing to do if you're already doing it. In a lot of scenarios, it can be very, very expensive. And, you know, like I was saying earlier, you know, sometimes it's more than you need. Sometimes it's exactly what you need. But in most cases, it's more about the look than the practicality of it. So if you talk through with a professional, if you know what your needs are, we can kind of assess your needs and start talking about how much things cost. And if it's too expensive, what are more cost-effective options to get the same result?
So can we talk about cost for a minute? People want to know, how much does it cost for a bathroom remodel here in San Diego? Because obviously we live in a really expensive area in California. I happen to know that there's different levels of service that you can get, different business models. Like, just how much does a bathroom remodel cost?
You know, it really depends. You know, if you think about how I opened when I was talking about the different types of contractors, depending on what you do is going to affect your cost. So if you know exactly what you want and you want to try and hire your own trades or do some of it yourself, you know, there's things you can do to save money. But I would warn you to be very cautious, because there's a lot that you don't know that can be very expensive, and you could find that you have to remodel your remodel when it's done. So design comes into play. So what can affect your costs? Well, do you need design? You know, if you need design, you know, it's more expensive to do the design, but you might save money in the end, because we can also do what's called, in industry terms, called value engineering, which is not only looking at what you need, but what's the most affordable way to do it. So sometimes you're paying someone for that service and you think that's additional cost. But when you look at the total value of the finished product, it might not be any more than you think you were going to spend. How much time are you going to be out of the home? You know, people think, well, I'll save thousands of dollars if I do it myself. But if things don't go well, and we're in construction, so guess what? If they never go well, and if you don't know what you're doing, I promise you it's going to take you fully. You know, Brad said there's the rule of threes. If they think it's going to cost 1,000, it'll cost 3. The same thing applies with timelines. If a homeowner thinks it'll take a month, it's going to take 3. And so that adds cost, and people don't think about that because sometimes time is grandma's coming in March and it has to be done by March. Sometimes time is I have to rent a house for every month while you're working in it because we can't live in it in that state. There's a lot of things that can affect your cost.
Yeah, that's a great question and a great answer. And this is where Jack and I collaborate and talk all the time. People, and it's gathering both their program. What are they trying to accomplish? What is their issue they're trying to overcome? And what is their budget as well? Because there might be a few solutions. Like very popular are these curbless showers. And they could be very costly depending on the structure of the house, if it's a slab on grade. But there might be an alternate option of getting in that shower by putting the placement of grab bars and simply putting a fold down seat in the shower, which are extremely elegant. They're absolutely gorgeous these days. So there are other options. But once we can gather both your program, what you're trying to accomplish, and your budget, we can sit down as a team, gain this perspective, and say, what's the best path forward for you? It's usually what I recommend. Give us as much information as possible and let us help make recommendations that work for you.
Okay. We've got another question that I overlooked earlier. It says, with COVID, are permits for building additions, how long is that permit process taking for additions right now, I think is the question.
So I can answer that. We pull permits every week. We probably have 24 projects in the city, in the assorted cities right now waiting for permits. And what I can tell you is they're just taking longer. So what used to be a 6 or 8 week permit process. And by the way, when you're filing for a permit, one of the most important things that are going to impact how long it takes to get your permit is how good the professional is that prepared your documents. You know, I had a customer once, we were going to do his documents and he said, I'm retired, I'll do it myself. And I said, well, be careful, it can be a little difficult. 2 full years later, he called up and said, listen, I can't get this permit. Could you please help me? And we were able to get it in 6 weeks. So the first thing is getting a complete set of documents that's very specific to your jurisdiction. It's not all the same rules for the United States. It's not all the same rules for California. It's not even all the same rules for San Diego County. There's very specific rules for each jurisdiction. And even within the jurisdiction, like say Carlsbad, depending on how close to the water you are, the rules change again. So that's step number 1. But generally speaking, after you've made it through all of those things, what I would say is a permit that used to take 6 or 8 weeks is now taking about 12. And what's happening is the city will tell us that it's going to be done on a day. In current events, like I'm talking right now in December of 2020, when they tell us a date, it's when we call, they usually say they're 2 to 4 weeks backlogged from that. So patience is definitely, and a lot of planning is required for something where you need to get a permit.
Right now with COVID, what are you seeing in the construction industry with just things that have changed? Besides timelines, is there any cost effects that are happening?
Yeah, so actually that's a really good question. So people are calling all the time. There's 2 things happening with COVID. First of all, people are like, well, it's a pandemic, nothing's happening, so things should be cheap. I'm going to take advantage of this opportunity and get a bunch of work done that I've been waiting on. Unfortunately, that's just not the case because what's happened with COVID is, and I forget who was speaking to it earlier, but COVID has changed how we live in the home and what our daily procession is. And what do I mean by that? If you've worked in an office for the most of your career, you would start your morning, get up, have breakfast, off you go to work, you come home for dinner. Now you come home, you do all that, you get your kids ready for school, and then you go to the kitchen table and you begin your work day. So people are doing that, and they're realizing that their needs inside the home are changing, right? They want a home office. They want a space for their kids to do their homework. The bedrooms are too small to put a desk in. There's no backyard. They don't want to live in a condo. They want to own their own piece of dirt so that they can have a pool in the backyard, or send the kids out to play, because having your kids play on a 4x8 balcony on the 15th floor doesn't work for 9 months. They need some grass to run around in. So the needs of the customers are changing. So the demand is as high as it's ever been. Everybody needs stuff done. And you combine that with COVID, and where I was starting earlier is that labor is in fact in more demand, and the cost of materials has skyrocketed because the manufacturing plants keep getting shut down. Someone shows up with COVID, they shut the whole plant down for 4 weeks. That impacts everybody's ability to get their material. Not only that, the workers doing the work, maybe they can't work because they have to stay home with the kids, because childcare and schooling is no longer an option. So there's less people to do more work with less materials available. So pre-planning, forward planning, and really working on budgets and how much things cost have never been more important than they are today.
What about materials? If I don't know what kind of construction materials most contractors use, but how's that coming into play with getting homes built right now?
Well, it's been for the last several months. The biggest issues, believe it or not, have been appliances. Because of the factories that we were talking about, and because frankly, the beginning of COVID, they sold 3 years worth of freezers in 1 month. So that was hard on demand. And then when the freezers all sold out, everyone started buying refrigerators. And for a reason I don't fully understand, dishwashers have been very back ordered lately. But those all come out of the same factory. So now we're starting to see delays all over the place. Lumber has been one where we haven't really seen materials not available, but the cost has in almost every case doubled, in a lot of cases tripled for the cost of lumber. And that has to do with, again, you think lumber comes from trees. It doesn't. It comes from a sawmill, and those are getting shut down with COVID like everybody else. When COVID first started in March, sawmills always have to shut down for maintenance, and a lot of the sawmills saw that and thought what we all thought, which is not much is going to happen for a while. So they said, well, let's do some of our deferred maintenance now. Then demand went up, and there was no sawmills to cut all the wood. So we're seeing a big impact on lumber. And that's been kind of going on for the last 6 months. In the last 30 days, we're starting to see shortages of material in almost every category. And so in a situation like that, you want to make sure that you're dealing with a large enough contractor that's going to be able to get the attention of both the labor and the materials suppliers. So, if I build 100 projects a year and another contractor just needs to build a deck, chances are that they're going to want to sell the material to the guy that's going to be buying material every 2 weeks, not twice a year. So that can impact your decision as well.
Interesting. I don't know what triggered my question, but I wrote down another question for you. I'm so sorry. I think it had to do with COVID and living in the house and remodeling. These folks that want to remodel their whole house, what does that look like for them? Because I know that, like my house, I just bought a brand new house. It's not brand new. It was built 40 something years ago. I need to gut and remodel the whole dang thing. What is that process look like?
So that can look like a lot of different things, different ways. Sometimes people will do it one space at a time, and they're able to live in the home, and that's very common. That's done. The downside of that is, instead of 6 months worth of construction, you could be talking 3 years of construction, one after the other. You can get fatigued by that. COVID's actually brought on another thing, because with social distancing and things, to state the obvious, you need to have people out of your pod or out of your direct family inside your home on a daily basis. So there's a lot of barriers. There's a lot of, we have to check temperatures every day and wear masks, all those sorts of things. That not only slows things down, but it can be very inconvenient for everybody. So if you're doing a whole gut and remodel, your best bet is to move out so that it can get done quicker and faster. And by the way, that's going to impact your cost to the positive, because now your drywaller can do 2,000 square feet of drywall instead of 200 and come back less times. Supervision is less, all those sorts of things. That can more than offset the cost of rent. And you're going to be able to move into, we spent a lot of time talking about how those turnkey homes aren't available. This is how you get a turnkey home. You rent a house for 6 months, remodel the whole thing, and you've got a turnkey home. You may spend 6 months looking for a turnkey home you never find.
I heard once, I don't know if it's true, if you take down the house to like one wall, that's considered a remodel, right?
Yeah, there's, and I'll let Michael speak to this a little bit as the architect. The short answer is yes. There's obviously a lot of nuances to that, but we do that very often. There's a thing called grandfathering, which is if it was there before, even if they change the rules on you, you're allowed to keep it and, even fix it up a little bit, but you just have to fix it up to the new code. So I'm doing a house right now where they had a swimming pool. The swimming pool was damaged and the city wanted to make them take the swimming pool out. But Michael was able to successfully argue that since it was already there, that they should be able to keep it, although they have to bring it up to code. So if they just completely tore it and then called me and said, I'm ready for my new pool, we wouldn't have been able to help them. Oh. So there's a lot of scenarios like that.
Yeah, it's a very nuanced situation. Jack and I have worked on a project where they essentially tore down the whole house, wanted to try to maintain the garage, and that classified as a renovation. But during the process, some of that wood of the garage was so badly damaged, the wall we were trying to maintain for renovation, it had to be replaced. It was just termite ridden. So the intent was to do a major remodel, but in essence, and that's the permit process we went through, but in essence, it was a brand new home. I think every stick of lumber, Jack, if I'm correct, I think every stick of lumber was brand new on that house when it was finished.
That's right. It was just all about timing. We left one wall standing, did everything else. And then when we were done with that, we went and repaired the existing standing wall. And that became a renovation instead of a brand new home from the city's perspective. From the homeowner's perspective, every stick of lumber and everything about that home is brand new.
What did the finance, do they just have the cash for that? Or did they go, like, I know that you can do construction loans. So maybe, Sean, can you tell us how construction loans and home improvement loans work?
Yeah, and I think in our little presentation at the end, I'm going to go in a little more depth on that. But there's, so if you're going to do the major remodel, we're talking, build from ground up. Usually that's considered a construction loan, and that's a situation where you get the plans, the permits together, you get your architect, you get your builder, and you literally get everything approved, based upon that. And typically they'll look at the appraisal will be done, and it'll be based upon the plans, not what's there existing, but what's going to happen in the future. And that's kind of how they base the value. So if you go in and let's just say you've got a property and you're going to do $1 million, build on the thing, and it appraises out at $2 million, right? So now, and say you've got $400,000 of debt on the existing, property. So your total cost there is going to be at $1.4 million. What we do is you look at the loan to value based upon the finished value or that $2 million value. And what you do is you come in and we would fund the loan. It would have what they call draws that would go along with the stages of the actual building. So the first draw may be to take out the 400 and pay back some architectural fees and some other stuff. And then at each milestone, when you pour concrete, when you finish your framing, when your drywall's in, when you're dried in on your roof, each one of those milestones, you get a draw that say it's $200,000, and that $200,000 is then, paid to the contractor and all the subs.
Oh, it does go to the contractor? It doesn't go to the homeowner?
Well, a lot of times there's what they call dual checks. So the check is written and it has to be signed by both the owner as well as the contractor. So, there's a thing called a fund control. Where basically a third party entity is the one that's actually dispersing the dollars. So anyway, then you go through that whole thing, you get your final at the end, you get your certificate of completion, you can move into the house. That'd be your final draw. And then most of the construction loans have what they call a one-time close, where then that loan then, which was typically interest only during the construction period, then it will roll to basically a 30-year takeout. And sometimes that's a 5-1 or a 7-1 product. Sometimes it's a 30-year fixed. So that's one scenario. The other scenario would be, you've got a house and you want to do just the, kind of the major remodel that's $300,000, right? And you're going to do bathrooms and bedrooms and kitchens and things like that. And in that scenario, we'll sit down with the client and just kind of figure out the best way to do it. Sometimes it's a combination. It's like, let's do a refinance on your current loan and pull out $200,000. You've got $50,000 cash you want to put into the project, and then let's do an equity line for $50,000. So, we custom it kind of to the scale and scope of what you're trying to do, as well as your also individual goals on it. So anyway, so that's a quick answer.
Can you get a, how would it look if you went to go buy a house that just had an amazing property, but you didn't like the house? So you wanted to get a loan for building new on that property. Can you do that?
Yeah, I mean, you definitely can do something like that. I mean, basically what you're doing now is you're buying the property as, in essence, a land loan, right? And then you're going to go and do this amazing remodel on it. The reality is we certainly do that. And there is a market for that out there. I'd say though, 90% of people do that either in stages over time, or they come in and they'll live with what they got, and then they'll wait, a period of time to make that big move on it. But yeah, no, I mean, it would be a very similar process of what I just talked about with the construction loan. Is we would come in and because it's going to take time to get the plans and permits all together, and to pick out the builder you want to work with, the architect you want to work with. And then once you get that all together, then it's about executing and putting the financing into play. When you do like a project like that, I always tell people it's cash intensive, so unless you can have the financing in place, but you've also got to be strong. I mean, the banks, when you're doing these types of construction loans, they want to see a strong borrower. So I don't want to say if you're trying to borrow $1 million, I don't want to say you have to have $1 million in the bank. But if you're going to do something like that, you've got to be strong, and you want to be strong because, you don't know what's going to happen during that process, and you got to be able to, handle whether some issues, that come across your plate.
I don't know if you already answered that, but do you need to start with the contractor or start with the lender when you need a construction loan?
Well, again, that's, really to be perfectly honest with you, is you need to talk to the contractor, you need to talk to the lender, you need to talk with the real estate agent, you need to talk to everybody.
Got it.
I want to say you want to start with everyone all at the same time. At the end of the day is, I'm going to ask you, when you come to me, I'm going to say, what's it going to cost? And I'm going to say, what the question to you would be, what's the value, the finished value of the property when you're done? Well, what's it going to cost is you got to talk to your builder, and what's the finished value going to be? You got to talk to your real estate agent. So, we could start with me, for example, and I could get it to a certain point, but then I'm going to say, you've got to go now. Here's your homework. Go out and get these points of information for me, or points of clarity.
Got it.
Yeah, this is great information, because quite frankly, I get these questions all the time, and I'm moving them over to the finance expert. So yeah, if you can just one more time, just briefly go over what do they do first, whether it's for construction loan or home improvement loan? Is it just contacting you and going through their individual scenario and their finances? Is that the first step?
Yes, absolutely. I mean, basically in any financing situation, whether it's literally a first-time home buyer buying a $200,000 condo, or someone saying, I'm going to do a $4 million, ground up build, it all starts with an application. It all starts with that 20-30 minute phone interview. And, we used to meet our clients after that, but, now we're doing Zooms and things. But, we start there. And literally it's building out basically your financial application, your loan application. And then we run a credit, and then we request backup documentation to verify that information. And so once we have all those pieces in play, then we can come back and say, here's the program that you would qualify for, and here's how much you would qualify for. And then I'd ask the question, what are you going to build? How much is it going to cost? And two, what's it going to be worth when it's done at the end? And then that's when you go and reach out to Jack, and you reach out to Brad and to Michael.
And I would add too to that, one of the things that we try to do as a contractor is to be very, very respectful of your money and your budget. So when a homeowner comes to me, especially with a larger project or with a long list of big projects, of course, I want to listen to the hopes and the dreams and everything that they want to do. But one of my first questions is always, what is your budget? Which also could mean, what can you afford? Because there's no point me helping you build this beautiful dream that's got everything you want, and then it's double what you could get a loan for or what you can afford. That can be extremely disheartening. So I think going into a major remodel, having a very good understanding of not only how much can you borrow, but how much do you want to, or how much can you afford to spend on the project, is going to let the contractor give you good advice on how to best utilize those dollars.
When you're doing a remodel, I've heard everything from kitchen contractor to general contractor to remodeler to design build contractor. Can you help us decipher who to call for what?
Well, yeah, and I talked a little bit about that in the beginning, and I'll kind of go through that again. Okay. It really depends on your needs and on what services you require. So and I'll tell you what I mean by that is, when I talked earlier about, do you need a handyman? Do you plan on just, calling your own plumber and calling your own tile setter, and because you know exactly what you want, those sorts of things? You need to know what services you need to provide. If you're going to try to get each one of those trades, you cannot rely on your plumber to give you good tile setting advice or good drywall advice. They'll have plenty, but you don't want to, you can't rely on it, right? Because they're not going to be held accountable for the result. I can't tell you how many times people have come in for me to do a project, and I've told them what it's going to cost, and they're say, well, my cousin Vinny said he could do it for 10 grand. And I'm like, well, then why don't you have him do it? Oh, he's too busy. So if they aren't willing to do it for what they're telling you that it can be done for, then does that opinion really count? And so you've got to find somebody who's got the skill sets and the services to match your need. So if you're comparing a design build contractor who's going to put all the pieces together and schedule the order of things, I talk a lot about the choreography of the job, right? Which means knowing which trades go in which order. If you don't, and there's a lot of nuances to that, you're not going to find that answer by doing a quick Google, because to your point, a lot of times those are written by ghostwriters that have just done research on the internet and then put that into another blog that you're now reading. And so you think you're reading something from an expert. What they're doing is compiling a list from other quote unquote experts. That becomes like a game of telephone, and you're 2 or 3 rows down, and it doesn't match up what's there at all. So what are the services? Do you need an expert that can tell you the order of things, or do you truly know and you want to take that project on your own? Those are all the things that are going to affect how much you have to pay the person doing the work. And here's another thing for you is this is an extremely competitive business. There aren't big margins in there. So if something is cheaper, you're either getting a lesser product or a lesser service. If something's more expensive, then you're maybe getting services that aren't required. So if someone goes to a design build contractor and they say, I've already got the plans, I've already picked out my tile, and this is the toilet I want, how much to put it all together? You're probably going to find that contractor is more expensive than you need to spend, because they're providing services you don't require. But if you go to a builder and say, I don't know what I want, but I want it beautiful, and they start throwing numbers at you, you haven't given them any level of specificity. So they're going to give you a low number to impress you, and it's going to be a death by 1,000 cuts. So what I always tell people is, the project's going to cost what it's going to cost. The only question is, when do you find out? Is it on the first day or is it on the last?
Got it. So big projects, they require what kind of services? What do I need to know? How do I know what services I need if I don't know what it's compiled of? Does the interior designer do the architectural plans? Have to go to permit?
Well, no. And so see right there, if you're asking that question, what you need is a design build professional.
Okay.
Because there are a lot of things you can't think of. There's a lot of interior designers out there that you hire them to do the interior design, and they do beautiful work. And then they tell you, don't worry, I know a bunch of people. Well, now you've got somebody that went to design school and knows how to put pallets together beautifully, that knows a tile guy and knows a plumber and knows a framer. And yes, they may have done a couple before, but so has your uncle, right? And that doesn't mean that they know all the nuances of what needs to be done. Especially now, building materials have gotten more complicated. How we build has gotten more complicated. And even the finishes that you've put in, there's plumbing materials that have computer chips in them and that need special wiring. You know, if you want to put a steam shower in your house, there's probably a dozen contractors in San Diego that could do that properly. So it really depends on what you're trying to put. If you have to ask the question, you need a professional.
Thank you.
All right, great. Let's touch on one of our next topics here. Brad, here's one for you. Is there a way to avoid or reduce fees and/or taxes when buying or selling a house?
Sure. There absolutely is. So there's quite a few. It depends on what kind of property you own, right? So do you own an investment property that you're looking to defer taxes to a later date? Or is it your own principal residence and you're looking to downsize maybe for retirement? So as always consult a tax professional first. You know, I can talk broad strokes on this, but ultimately your individual scenario should be run past a CPA or someone who really knows the tax laws. But if you own an investment property, what you can do is what's called a 1031 exchange. Let's say you have a rental home that you're looking to sell and buy another one. You can sell and buy a property and not pay capital gains taxes on it when you sell it. It defers the tax and the basis to a later date, but it doesn't mean that you have to pay the taxes today. Okay, so that's number one. If you want more, there's tons of topics surrounding 1031 exchanges. If you want to schedule something with me personally, I'm happy to go through that, as I don't want to take up too much time here. The other one is if you own a principal residence, you live in it, and you're going to sell that home, right? If you're an individual, there's a $250,000 federal tax waiver for that every 2 years that you own a home. If you're a married couple, it's $500,000. It's $250,000 each. So every time you sell your principal residence, as long as it's 2 years apart, you can have that waiver from capital gains. The third is a new proposition. I won't go too much into detail, but Prop 60 and 90 have been in existence for quite some time. That's where someone 55 years or older can transfer their tax basis down and can keep their existing tax basis if they buy a home that's at the same cost or less. And just recently we passed Prop 19, which is a new one, and all the nuances of that are coming out now, but basically allows people 55 and older to actually buy up a little bit more and have an adjustment as opposed to losing that tax basis altogether. So there's some different things, creative things that you can do to make sure that you're not paying as much in fees, and having a plan together before you take any action is definitely good.
I want to interrupt really quick. Brad mentioned something I completely forgot about. So these guys have Calendly appointments. If you want to schedule an appointment, a one-to-one conversation with any of our panelists, if you go to the chat box, we are going to be putting in their links so that you can do that directly with them. I'm going to do that here just shortly. I have to shoot them off to Fred in the background. He mentioned something else that kind of triggered a thought for me, for Sean, actually. I live in an older community, and can you tell us anything about reverse loans, reverse mortgages? Well, I'm looking for the numbers.
Yeah, sure. So reverse mortgages have been around for, numbers of years, probably 30, 35 years. I think they got a bad reputation when they first came out of the box because so a lot of the investors or the people that were doing them were smaller insurance companies and smaller financial institutions. And some of those were set up, not all of them, but some were set up where they were really kind of life estates where you got to live in the house for free. And then when you died, basically the bank or the investor ended up with the property. And so the reverse mortgage industry got a really bad name, I think, initially when it popped out of the bag of tricks. But really what's happened now over the last 15 or 20 years or so is now it's primarily an FHA program. So it's a US government sponsored program. There are what they call jumbo reverse mortgages, which are private label. But those jumbo guys that are doing it are also following these same guidelines. So these are now safe loans. They're really loans to help seniors to stay in their houses and not move into assisted living, because basically it costs a whole lot more to take care of somebody when they're in assisted living than if they stay in their own house. So really the way it works is it's based upon your age and it's based upon the value of the property. So the older you are and the higher the value of the property, then in essence, the more money you get. And basically the deal is you don't need to qualify. There's no income side of it there. But what you do is when you go in, you'll get the loan. And instead of you making a monthly mortgage payment every month to the bank, you either have no payment or you get basically a monthly payment back to you, like maybe $1,000 or $1,500, or you set it up with what they call an equity line, where you actually have access to the equity in your house and you can draw on it when you need that money. Say you'll have a $200,000 or $300,000 equity line. But if you do draw out and use that money, you don't have to pay it back. Now, what's going on behind the scenes is whatever amount of financing you have and whatever amount of money is on the loan, the interest that you would have paid monthly actually gets accrued to the principal balance every month. And so what happens is the balance of the loan grows over time. And the one question people always ask me is, if I get a reverse, can I actually make payments? And the answer is, yeah, you can make payments, but then you have the option of not to make the payments. And most people getting them are not taking them. I'll just give you a quick example. Elderly woman living in her house. She had Social Security and a small pension. She just got to the point where she needed someone to come in, and she did not have the money to do that. The house had about $100,000 debt on it, and it was worth $650 or so. So we were able to come in and get her about a $400,000 reverse mortgage, and she was able to basically on a monthly basis get a $1,500 to $2,000 a month more coming in, and she didn't have to make her mortgage payments anymore. And that extra $1,500, basically $2,000, went to the caregiver that was coming in 5 days a week.
Wow.
So, that's in a nutshell how those work. Again, they are now safe products. They are competitively done out there.
I want to go off script really quick, guys. I just had a fun thought. We all are professionals. We all have stories that really showcase what happens if you hire the wrong person. Can we go down the line and just tell us a horror story about, because I know you all have them. What have you heard when you've been called into a home to speak with somebody and it's because they had XYZ problem? Tell me a story.
Wow. I'll chime in. I've got one with Jack knows about. So we did the drawings, beautiful home design. They met with Jack. And this homeowner decided to be their own general contractor. He is in his 70s. He was a woodworker at one time, and he thought he'd want to take this on himself as the general contractor. And quite frankly, I've been in the industry my entire life. I could not be a general contractor, nor would I want to take it on. It is a full-time job plus. So what we're having there is, he's unable to read the drawings. He has no pull because he's only doing one project to get any subcontractors to his site. So the initial stage of just excavation and foundation, which might take Jack a month, not even, is 3 to 4 months. Then we start framing and the crews aren't showing up, or they can't read the plans themselves. So it's the quality of people, it's the availability of people to someone who wants to take on being a general contractor which like I said, I wouldn't advise it unless you were a general contractor and fairly recently. Have, you know, Jack works more than I do. So he's working 50, 60 hours a week. I know that because I'm texting and calling Jack and emailing him on the weekends with questions and issues to resolve. And then there's just the availability of the subcontractors. They just don't have the resources. And quite frankly, they don't have the expertise to understand if a subcontractor or a trade is telling them the correct method, path, or information. So they're totally at the whim of the market and these people that they don't know and will never do another project with. So that project, which, you know, it might take Jack 6 months to complete, I'm estimating it's probably going to take 18 to 20 months to complete.
Well, that's a lot of cost and time.
And well, I didn't even touch on costs. They moved forward into each of these contracts without knowing how much it's going to cost. So I implored the owner to please get a contract, get these things in writing, get these estimates, get these numbers. And we still don't know. We don't know when it's going to be finished, and we don't know what it's going to cost. So that's one of the worst case scenarios I have right now. And the owner's calling me constantly to try to assist him as a general contractor. And as I said, quite frankly, I've been doing this my whole life. I am not qualified to be a general contractor. So I go out there and I tell them how framing should go together. But like I said, it's one of those situations where I had to send the homeowners about 3 letters saying, this is not the path I recommend. Please think again. Which that comes up very rarely. But in this case, I had to give them my expert opinion in writing that this is not the path to go down. So that's one of my horror stories that is ongoing today.
Sean, you got anything?
Yeah, I've got one. I've got a good one for you. So again, some of you might know the community of Oceanside in San Diego County here. It's a kind of a beach community, but it's also on the eastern side of it is more of kind of affordable housing. In some areas where it's kind of a little bit, run down in older neighborhoods. So I've got a client that kind of over the span of about 5 or 6, 7 years went and bought, about 20, 25 houses in that older neighborhood and basically turned them all into kind of rentals. And so his game plan was to go in and convert over garages and to use bigger backyards to put in like an additional ADU so he could, pump up his rental income. And of course, not taking my advice or other people's advice, he kind of did everything, under the table and kind of without permits and, kind of iffy construction and the whole thing. And he ends up renting one of those extra units to a woman that, turns into the renter from hell. And so he just gets into this, she keeps going back to him like, hey, I've got a problem with a leaky roof. Hey, I got a problem with some goofy electrical. Hey, I got a problem with, and he just keeps blowing her off. Well, it turns out she works for the city of Oceanside's planning department. And, they get into this drag out, like he's trying to evict her and this whole thing. And of course, the next thing you know is the city of Oceanside's building department has red flagged all of his properties. And so now he's calling me up and we're in this process of doing this massive series of loans and financing in order to go back in and basically to fix right all the stuff that he had done wrong the first way around. And he goes even to this, and it's taking it's going on year 2 of this because basically the planners and the city people at Oceanside hate this guy. And, unlike what you were talking about getting the right person to talk to the right people within the local city's jurisdiction. I mean, he's just going in there just with, just a big old bullseye on his back. And of course, nothing can be done right. So do it right the first time. It may cost a little bit more, but in the end of the day, you're going to end up ahead of time.
Nice. Brad?
Yeah, I was thinking about this as everyone else was chatting. I think we get a bad rap in our business as realtors, right? The barrier to entry for us is so low. and passing a test doesn't give you really much skill at all in terms of sales and process and preparing homes for sale. I was fortunate enough to be able to learn the flipping game early and sales early. So we've had processes in the past where we've taken listings that have been previously listed by other agents. And a lot of times people think, they put a sign in the yard and, put it on the MLS and it's going to sell. And they're not totally wrong right now in our market that it could sell. But what we find is that we're able to leverage so much more. So we had one that tried to do it themselves. They took pictures like putting their thumb over license plates in the front door or in the front picture, with their iPhone, with people in the photos and everything else. And it just wouldn't sell. And we are able to come in and actually do a full marketing suite, right? And fix it up and make it look its very best and put some paint on the walls and everything else. And that's what really makes it shine, put it back on the market. And it's a dramatic difference in terms of the price. And I don't know the price difference off the top of my head, but it was pretty substantial in terms of what you're able to leverage. So a lot of people think that we're, and there's a lot of times that they're right. There's a lot of agents in our business that don't do a great job and that don't give that full service. And we were able to come in and really help them out and leverage it all the way. So be careful doing it on your own.
I have to admit that I wanted to get my real estate license. I thought it would be a fun hobby. I thought maybe I could help out my friends and my family and they wouldn't have to pay these huge fees. So I think you're right. The barrier to entry, it's only like 30 hours you have to do of work, of like paperwork, but then there's so many other aspects that we don't know about. So I think you're right there.
I haven't used anything that I learned from taking my test or taking the 30 hours of work.
Jeez.
Maybe how many square feet are in an acre. That's about it. It's so much more that you learn after you actually take your test.
Jack, I know you've got a ton of stories. Have you figured out which one you want to tell?
Well, I'm not exaggerating, but I could literally write a book about this. Half the stories I would tell, they would never make a movie because it's not believable. But I will tell you that probably at least once a quarter, I get a homeowner that we went out, we looked at their property, we gave them a price. They told us that we were nuts. Sometimes they were even mad at us for wasting their time. They hired somebody else, a lot of times unlicensed or whatever. And then they call me up crying because they spent all their money on the project. It's only half done and they won't come back. And would I please finish it? And then when I go out there and look at it, the cost to fix it was actually more than it was originally. And then they're mad at me again. And I'm trying to explain to them, not only do I have to build it like we did before, but I got to tear out everything they did and fix the other stuff they messed up, and that happens all the time. As far as some horror stories, I had a guy once call me to come out this house and he said, listen, I had a bunch of buddies come out. They all did a pretty good job. There's only one problem. This is a true story. And I said, really, what's that? And he said, well, whenever you touch the side of the house, you get a shock. So he said, I think maybe you have a grounding problem. Could you come fix that? And I said, no, I cannot fix that. Right. Another time I went into this guy's home and he said, listen, I started doing, and it was a house where you load on the top story and then it kind of goes down 3 stories down the hill, if you will. So the top story is really the first floor. And he says, look, I tackled this project on my own, but my wife's kind of getting after me. It's taking too long. Would you mind helping me fix it up? And I'm like, sure, absolutely. And we're walking all around the first floor, looking at the first floor. Kids are watching cartoons. Then he takes me down to the next level. And I get down to the next level. There's literally live wires hanging out of the ceiling without the breakers turned off, where if you touch them, you'd get shocked. And then I look up and there's one wall that goes down the middle of the house that was holding up the whole floor up above where his kids were. And the floor was literally in a V about 1.5 inches in the middle down. And I looked up and I said, listen, I'm not trying to be dramatic, but you need to get your family out of the house right now. because literally the wall that holds the whole house up was about to fall down. Like, those demo videos where they blow one explosive and the whole bridge caves? He took that wall out. And so, where there was 2 like floor joists sitting on top of a wall, the only thing holding the whole house up was the couple of nails that they used to nail the 2 pieces of wood together. Then he said I was being dramatic and he kicked me out of the house. So I don't even know. That was a guy that clearly didn't need an expert.
Oh,
So-
that is funny.
But I mean, I could literally go on and on, but it really is true. I can't tell you, the example that Michael's telling you, that is an extremely expensive home in a very expensive neighborhood. And he was upset at what he thought my cost would be. And I will tell you, never mind the cost of carry for the extra year and the aggravation. He's literally living in a trailer while he builds this multi-million-dollar home. But he's going to go crazily over budget. And my heart goes out to him. I want to help, but once you get into a certain level, there's really not much I can do. Sean was saying, if you're going to tackle these big projects, they're cash intensive. They're cash intensive for a reason. It's because if you don't know all those details, you'll run out of money so fast it'll make your head spin. If you know what's going on, you may not like the answer, but at least you'll know the truth. Again, when you've got someone that knows what they're doing and they know the way to be efficient about it, it can lower the cost and it will offset what it costs you to pay for that professional.
That's a really good end to that segment. I really appreciate that. I want to remind everybody who's watching live, if you want some one-on-one time with any of our experts here, we've got Jack Crocker with Classic Home Improvements. We have Michael, I can never say your last name.
Michael K is fine. Michael K is fine.
Michael K. We've got Brad Seaman with the Seaman team. We've got Sean Kelly with RWM Home Loans. Please feel free to schedule an appointment to meet with them offline. I appreciate everybody who's here with us today, watching, participating. Like I said, this was a year in the making for me. I really wanted a platform where homeowners could speak directly to the experts without having to hear a sales pitch and actually get the real talk. So thank you so much for being here. If you've got any requests for any future segments like this, please feel free to email me. My email is nicole@smallbusinessmarketingsolutions.com. Again, for our attendees, check your mail because I've got something coming to you. And thank you again. Any final questions? Does anybody have anything they'd like to add before we go? Because we're actually going to cut it short a few minutes early, not very.
I'd like to chime in on one thing. I have horror stories from each of these professions, so of our panelists, which is why I cherish once I find good professionals like this. So like I said, I've been in this industry for a while. When I seek out these professionals, I hold them in high esteem and I contact them for their perspective. I implore you as homeowners, people that are passionate, want to build a project, please reach out to these professionals for any questions. And like I said, like good professionals they're going to coordinate and recommend who you should talk to next. So I can't thank our panel enough, and I appreciate what they're doing.
All right.
I want to say thank you to Nicole. You put so much energy into this, so much effort to bring this to life, and thank you very much.
Thank you.
You're awesome.
Oh, thanks. I think so. Oh, we've got a question that just popped in. Hang on one sec. Oh, thank you very much, Tina. I appreciate it. Take care, all. Be safe and happy holidays.
Bye now.
Thank you.
Thanks, everybody. Take care.